search for a answer on internet, in books, even in conversation with friends or teacher. But we ever stopped and ask yourself a simple questions. Is searching for information the same as doing research? Most people believe that the research simply means the collecting facts from the different sources. However, research is much more than gathering information. If we look at the word itself, it can be divided into two parts. Re means again, and search means to look for something. So research means to search again, to investigate again, and to examine something more deeply. Research is a systematic process of inquiry. It begins with a questions or a problem that we want to understand more deeply. A researcher carefully observes a situation, asks meaningful questions, and evaluate evidence to find reliable explanation instead of relying on a personal opinion. Research focuses on the pattern, relationship, and logical reasoning, supported by the evidence. In the other words, research is not random curiosity. It is a disciplined and structured way of thinking about reality. Understanding this idea is the first step in learning how knowledge in science, social science, and humanities is actually created. To understand research properly, it is equally important to understand what research is not. Research is not simply copying information from books, articles, or online sources. Collecting information may be part of learning, but it doesn't automatically become research. Research is also not about using complicated or technical language just to impress reader or listeners. Good research values clarity uh, and the reasoning, not unnecessary complexity. Simply, research does not usually provide instant solution to complicated social problem. Most research study aims first to understand and explain a problem rather than solve it immediately. So what actually makes something research? Research begins with a clearly defined questions or issue that needs systematic investigation. Instead of only describing events, research attempt to explain why a phenomena occurs and how different factors are connected. Most importantly, research rely on logic, evidence, and carefully analysis rather than personal opinion or assumptions. In simple words, research is the process that transforms curiosity into reliable and structured knowledge. Every research study began with a problem. However, in the context of research, the word problem doesn't necessarily mean something negative. Instead, it refers to a puzzle, question, and situation that is not fully understood and require investigation. A research problem may arise when a researcher observes a difficulty, notice an unusual pattern, or encounter a situation that creates curiosity. For example, a researcher might ask questions such as why is a particular social issue increasing over time? And how does a certain process actually work in practice? These type of questions form a starting point of the research process because they guide the direction of investigation. Research problems often emerge from different sources. They may come from personal experiences, field observations, and broader social and economic issues. Something they also arise from existing theories and academic discussions, where a scholar realizes that certain aspects of reality are still not clearly explained. In many cases, discussion with teacher, expert, and peer also help researchers to identify meaningful research problems. In simple words, research problems are not created in isolation. They usually develop from real-life observations and intellectual curiosity about the world around us. Now, an important question arises: where do research problems actually come from? A research problem rarely appears suddenly or randomly, as we seen. Most research problems emerge from real-life experiences, observation, and academic discussion, as we know. One most common source is personal experience. Researchers often notice issues in their daily lives. They create curiosity and they encourage deeper investigations. Another important source is field observation. When researchers visit communities, institutions, and public organizations, they may observe patterns or difficulties that require systematic study. Research problem can also arise from broader social, political, or economic issues. For example, problems related to unemployment, inequality, and government and governance or digital access may inspire important research questions. In many cases, scholars also identify research problems while examining existing theories. They may realize that certain ideas do not fully explain reality or new perspectives are needed. Similarly, reviewing previous research and academic literature often reveal unanswered questions or gaps that require further investigation. Discussion with experts, teachers, or fellow researchers can also help refine ideas and identify meaningful research problems. In addition, policy changes, new developments, and comparison between different regions or social groups often generate new areas of research. In simple terms, research problems are closely linked to both real-world situations and ongoing academic debates. At this stage, it is important to clearly understand the difficulty between a research problem and a research gap because many students often confuse these two concepts. A research problem usually emerges from real life situations, observations, or a practical experiences. It begins when a researcher notices something puzzling or unclear in society and wants to understand why it happens. For example, a researcher might observe issues such as unemployment, inequality, governance challenges, or problems in public services. These observations raise questions that form the basis of the research problem. A research gap, however, is identified in a difficult or maybe different words. It emerges when a researcher carefully review existing academic studies, books, and scholarly literature. While studying previous research, the scholar might realize that the certain aspect of a topic have not been fully explained, that some perspectives have been ignored, or that important questions remain unanswered. This missing or incomplete knowledge in the existing literature is known as a research gap. In simple terms, a research problem is an issue observed in reality, whereas a research gap is missing knowledge within academic research. A strong research study usually connect these two elements by addressing a real-world problem while also filling a gap in existing scholarship. Finally, it is important to understand the difference between a research problem and the statement of problem. A research problem refers to an actual issue, puzzle, and situation that require investigation. It may arise from real-world observations, theoretical debates, or unanswered questions in a particular field of study. At the beginning of the research process, this problem is often broad, complex, and not clearly defined. The researcher's first task is, therefore, to identify, understand the nature of that issue. However, in academic research, the problem cannot remain vague or loosely described. It must be carefully clarified and presented in a structured form. This is where the statement of the problem becomes important. A statement of the problem is a clear, precise explanation of the issue being investigated. It defines the focus of the research and explains why the topic is significant and worthy of the study. In simple terms, the research problem refers to the puzzle or issue itself, while the statement of the problem refers to the way the researchers present and explain that issue in a clear academic form. Understanding the differences between the research problem, a research gap, and the statement of problem is essential for designing a strong and meaningful research study. In the next lecture, we will examine how researchers convert or transform a research problem into a clear research questions and research objective. Before you leave, think about this question. Can you identify a research problem related to your own field of study? You may write your ideas in the comments and we will discuss some example in the next lecture. Thank you.